more exciting than watching a guy thank people. Right? But I really want to thank Shout Factory for putting out this DVD with all the music intact. A whole new bunch of people who've never seen the show get to see it now. So that's, when you do TV, that's the one thing you want is you do it and it definitely goes away. You never see it again until you die and they show it in a small clip. So anyway, what we're doing is we're going to show the final episode, Discos and Dragons, which I wrote and directed. And then we're going to, we have some of our cast members who will bring up, I know, which is extremely cool. And we're just going to answer everybody's questions. We don't have a lot of speeches to make, so we would just love to answer any and all questions. Get as personal as you want, as long as it's with Sam Levine. And it will be good. So, thanks so much. Enjoy the episode, and we will talk to you afterwards. Really appreciate it.
Kapchowski's there too.
The members of our cast that came down. John Daly. All we ask is when you meet them, don't say, hey, you got really tall. Sam Levine. Mr. Martin Starr. Please, come on. Yes?
Hi. I just want to say I love the show. It was nice to have something come out when I was the age of characters that wasn't condescending. And now I'm starting college, and I was wondering, is there going to be an Undeclared DVD release?
Yeah, they're working on a Shout Factory who put out Freaks and Geeks is in the process of getting Undeclared ready.
Okay, thank you.
They have a lot of music. We had a lot of music clearance issues, so that's why it took us 4 years to get it out. They have even more. So
oh, really?
It is coming.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi.
I'll bounce back and forth. So yes.
Hi. I don't know too much about after the show, what happened or anything like that, but I just have one question. Why did this show end? Why?
A little thing called ratings and budgets and money. I know it's just the drag about network television, which is you just have to hit such a high number on the ratings. And we, whenever you think about our show, we always languished. We were actually the lowest rated show on NBC for a long time. They moved us around quite a bit.
Jesus.
I know, exactly. It takes a lot to establish a show, and to really get a show going, you have to leave it on the same spot for a long, for a whole season, so that people can find it. We were on Saturday nights, which was kind of a bit of a death slot for us because most of our audience was out having fun. And then we were on for 2 weeks, and they pulled us off for 3 weeks for the World Series. Then we were on for a month, and then we were off for 2 months, and then we were back on Monday nights. And they put Who Wants to Be a Millionaire up against us when that show actually was big. So it was a slow, drawn-out, painful death, as those of you who were with us from the beginning know. But we we're just kind of happy we got to do 18 in a weird way, because if you think about it, a show like this, it's kind of amazing they let us do it at all. So try to take the positive road.
Thank God for the DVD though.
Yes, exactly. And thank you guys for buying the DVD.
First a comment, second a question. First off, I just want to say that, like she said in the episode, I wish I had never seen the episodes just so I could see them all again for the first time. Secondly, I was wondering how much improvisation was involved in any of the moments, especially the little moments that were added that made the show so great. Was there any under that, or were they all pretty much well written?
Yeah, we wrote it quite a bit, but then this cast was so great, we would always we would let sort of alternate takes go, and I mean, you guys, what do you think? Yeah?
Often I found that conversations that like the cast would have at like the craft service table between us in real life would wind up in the script, which was always interesting.
Yeah, that we sort of really intruded into their lives, I have to say. Here's the thing why this show, I think, works so well, is that you find great people who are not only great actors, but have great personalities. And as a writer, you're tempted to go like, oh, let's just, I wrote this line to make these people do this, but you're completely killing the show if you do that, because you have these great personalities, so you want them to bring themselves to it. So we did a lot of eavesdropping on them, and any sort of rivalries, or not that there were any, but any unpleasantness that would always end up on the show and stuff like that. So it just made it more realistic. And then you guys were always adding things here and there. We tried not to go too much, because then you have so much show you can't edit it together. But it was a pretty loose yet tight. Agree? Martin?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here and doing this. This is absolutely wonderful. It's just a huge surprise. Paul, I've got a question for you regarding the episode we just saw. I thought it was a perfect, sad, sweet ending to the series, but I wondered why turn Lindsay into a deadhead. What was the motivation?
It was one of the very first things when we were kind of trying to figure out what to do with Lindsay in the beginning. I had always written down that I'd always envisioned she would probably at one point become like a performance artist or something, like Karen Finley, and then she'd go somewhere else. Just because, to me, she's the one who is searching and doing everything, and so very early on, Judd was like, she should become a deadhead. It's like, yeah, that's kind of cool, because we always wanted her to have different interests than everybody around her. And when I was in school, there weren't a lot of deadheads around, but the ones that kind of were into it always seemed like they were tapped into some other kind of cooler source than we all were. So it was a nice way to kind of keep her on her forward journey. And what I'll also say about this episode, too, is that whole disco thing actually happened to me. So, except the sad thing was I was not talked into it by a girl. I did it all on my own. Yes. And now student guy who did magic.
How old were you?
I was 24 years old. No, I was a senior in high school, so I have no excuse. Very sad.
Disco sucks.
Yeah, right on. And that was Joel Hodgson, as you all know. Between having Joel Hodgson and Chase Lemieux, who you may or may not have, Dr. Forrester is the teacher who Dr. Trey had. So it's hard to tell without the mustache. Yeah.
Hi, this is a question for Sam Lee. I hear you've done some stand-up comedy. Are you still doing it?
Not as much as I used to. Not a big demand anymore, I guess. You'd rather see me act like a goofball than try to be on stage. But if and when I get a real gig, I'll let you know.
Sam has an honor. He is, what do you do?
I am the youngest member of the New York Friars Club. That's it's really not as cool as it sounds. I just want to keep it around because I love my organs.
And it's not often the Friars Club gets a big round of applause at Comic-Con.
Hi, Paul. Given the track record of Judd Apatow's work, because of Ben Stiller's show, how hard this show was to sell to NBC? That's one question. Two, what I loved about Freaks and Geeks was the casting was awesome. I mean, I don't think there's another show like Freaks and Geeks where, sure, you guys are just characters, but it was just watching real life, it's watching real people. The only show that I could think on NBC that was closest to somewhat Freaks and Geeks was Ed in some odd way. Because, there's a fat kid, Chester's the weird kid, and, if those two shows were paired up, that would have been awesome. Ed was like 4 years, right?
Yeah, well, Ed actually premiered the same year we did, and it lasted. Did they did?
Yeah.
I'm trying to put it out of my head. No, Well, that's casting. Like I was saying, is the most important thing in the world, because you can sit there and try to fit people into roles and don't be like this and that. But once again, it's due to this cast being so talented and bringing such strong personalities that they're able to put all those, to put it out on the screen, and then it just makes it real, because like you say, it is like watching real people, because my biggest problem with comedy is I hate really kind of wink and nod comedy, where you're like, oh, the guy's nuts, and kind of that, you know, which sometimes it works, but I think I always call it sort of the Midwest thing, which is our bullshit meter is so high in the Midwest that it's kind of, you see somebody being, I don't know, that it doesn't feel real, you don't feel that these people are who they are. I just don't find it as funny. And wait, no, your first question was, sorry about it.
How hard not?
Oh, selling at NBC.
Selling to NBC.
It was surprisingly easy. Here's the sort of the little nutshell, quick story of this, which I wrote this as a spec. I wrote the pilot episode as a spec script, so nobody wanted it. I just wrote it, which normally you develop a show and it takes all season to go through notes and notes and notes. Judd, who was an old friend of mine, he had a deal at DreamWorks. I sent it to him, and he was like, I want to make this. So he sold it to DreamWorks. DreamWorks then took it, sold it to NBC, because apparently NBC was looking for, they had like, I guess 5 or 6 high school shows in development. And this was the year that everybody thought they wanted a 1-hour dramedy, if you will. So they immediately got ours, and we were in production like that. The drag was that once we made it and they put us on the schedule, they changed studio heads. A guy named Scott Sassen was running it, but he was more of a business guy who didn't know a lot about the creative side. Once they put us on, they brought in Garth Amseer, who thought, yes, exactly, who is a creative guy. He's running the WB now. And, no, they're great. Why would I say such an ugly thing? And he came in and immediately kind of didn't get the show. He was talking to Judd and I and said, you know what, you guys, I don't get this show. Well, yeah, he was a jock, and he was also, he goes, I went to boarding school, I didn't know any people like this. He's like, oh boy, we're so dead. And it just sort of slowly dissolved. But we got on easy. That's the price you pay. You get on easy, get off very quickly. Yes.
This is probably documented somewhere, and I just missed it, but I'm visiting from a little suburb about 30 miles north of Detroit.
Hey.
And I love the little references peppered throughout to the local culture and everything like that. What was the inspiration to set the whole series in Michigan, the Detroit area? You had so many places to pick from.
I wish I could say it was some big artistic reason, but it's where I grew up. So, where are you from?
I live in Utica.
Utica, okay. Oh my God. Yeah, we know people. We have some common friends. Once again, I wanted to bring that Midwest sense to it because I just find that stuff funny. And the biggest thing for me was I don't see that stuff represented on television. It's usually either New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, which is all cool, but I don't know, you never see the Midwestern experience, which is why, especially with high school shows, I always felt like I was watching people I didn't know, with problems I didn't know, because everybody was so overwhelmingly kind of into dating, the politics of dating and sex. I was like, yeah, that was around, but we were just more trying not to get our ass kicked, and like, how can I get through the day with my dignity intact? And it felt like a good way to do it. And then from there, it just was fun to put in all the local references ad nauseum. So the people I grew up with find the show hilarious, because they know where everything's from.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. Thanks, Steve. This question's for Paul and for Mark. No matter who I talk to about Freaks and Geeks, the scene that always comes up is Bill watching Gary Shandling. I just am curious where that scene came from and just filming it and what you think it's supposed to reflect about the character.
Well, I'll just say real quick, right? So that's completely out of Judd Apatow's life. That was Judd's after-school life. And that episode was really a personal one for him because that was what he used to do after school. And he directed that one. So do you have any recollections of
there were a lot of dirty jokes said by Judd because they couldn't get the playback to work, so I was pretty much laughing to Judd's sick mind. And I don't know how deep your question was, but that was...
Did he ask you to show that much grilled cheese?
Yeah, I think most of his direction involved more cheese and more brownie.
And also Gary Shandling is a big mentor of Judd's because they were done with Larry Sanders. So.
I just have one comment and then one question. I have never seen Freaks and Geeks before I walked into this, and I'm probably the only one in the room, but this is the best damn thing I've seen in a very long time. And the question is, how do you write such wonderful dialogue?
Thanks. Once again, it's kind of using the voices of these actors up here. And then, I mean, when I write, you know how you'll see people writing in like Starbucks or whatever. I can't do that because I used to be an actor for a long time, and so when I write, for me, it's acting the words and saying them and making sure they work because, you know, as these actors can attest to, you go to so many auditions and do so many parts where these lines, you're like, what person talks this way? Because it's kind of constructed on paper and it doesn't exist in the real world. And so it's just really finding people's voices and the beats, and then allowing everybody to interpret it as they want. You know, a lot of times I use sitcoms, and I use Sam Endo, which is sometimes too. And some guys you have to literally call up to the front office to see if you can change a the to an A and that kind of thing, which is ridiculous because it's not Shakespeare, you know, and to make it natural. So it's a lot of that. It's just being observational and just not trying to graft fakeness into a character. Nothing worse than going like, he has to say this because we need to get this info out. So I know it's weird, but just say this really obtuse sentence, and the plot will advance.
And also, Paul and Steve and the rest of the writers are that much more brilliant than any other writers working at the time. That also
Hi, for Paul. I just recently read Kick Me just a few months ago, and I thought it was great, just especially seeing how much of your own life went into Freaks and Geeks. And I was wondering if you had any other writing projects on the way, or
well, they're actually the sequel to Kick Me is 2 chapters away from completion, and it's absolutely horrifying. It's called Super Stud, and you'll be. Trust me, it's not what it sounds like. I appreciate that. We used all our stories for the show. When we first got together with all the writers, we locked us all in a room for 2 weeks with questionnaires. Steve was also a writer on the show, and he knows we remember that process.
Yeah, we took about the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we just told our own high school horror stories. Mm-hmm. Just got to know everyone and got to know where we all came from, and then from there, a lot of our own ideas.
Yeah.
Slowly started to grow.
Yeah, because I wrote like 20 questions of like, what was the worst thing that ever happened to you? Who did you hate? Who did you love? And the stories that came out, like the episode, The Garage Door, where Sam's characters are riding around, looking for his father having an affair. That was one of our writers, Jeff Judah. That actually happened to him. And so, we're like these parasites. Like you hear a tragic story, like we're using that. I'm so glad that happened to you. So that's well, thanks. Thanks for
Hi, my name is Jim, class of '81.
All right.
Good to see you all here. 2 questions, if I may. First, for all of you, how was it to work with Joe Flaherty? And secondly, during production, were there cliques develop among the cast along the lines of divisions between the characters?
Well, I'd say Joe is the funniest man I've ever met and the nicest man I've ever met, and he made working on Freaks so much more fun than it already was. I mean, there are scenes where we would go take after take because I could not stop laughing just from the stuff that he made up and the stuff that he screwed up, and just everything that he does is so funny. And so he's great. He was a blast to work with.
I second that. Joe is one of the greatest improvisers I've ever met.
And then any politics on this end? Mark? He's preparing. Oh, Freaks and Geeks Babylon. Come on.
One time when we all left, I think to go to a movie, and my car was parked behind Joe's, he had all the stage men lift up his car like in that Mentos commercial. Just thought I'd share that with you. And it kind of ended up during the show that like the Freaks would hang out and they would go over their lines together and do things together, and likewise with us. Although it was never the 3 of us, it would always be me and Sam, or John and Sam, or me and John. It was very strange.
But the three of them together were a powder keg. But the other thing was that these guys were all underage when we were doing it so they were usually filming at a different time than the Freaks were, so generally they were kind of hanging at different times. But what's great is they're all still friends. I mean, there's still parties. We just went to Martin's 25th birthday. 82nd birthday. 21st, so he's legal, ladies.
Yeah, because we're the fortune.
And they're all still friends. It's so great. I mean, it's just nice. You know, you kind of did something right when you see everybody having a good time like that and remaining friends. So I'm very proud. Go over to this.
I just want to say during the course of the series, you guys also had some amazing guest stars, like Jason Schwartzman, Ben Foster. They were just fantastic. Every time I saw a new person, I'm like, yeah. So I was just wondering, I had a couple questions. I was wondering who your favorite guest star was to work with. And then also, are you guys aware of the huge fan following for Bill? And how do you feel about that?
Martin, how do you feel?
Is that directed toward me? I don't know how to feel. I'm not that aware. I knew that there was a Operation Haverchuck, and that was like the Freaks and Geeks. But as far as that's as deep as I go.
You won't break.
I want to break something else.
As far as our favorite, we love him, obviously. I do have to say that I thought, who I really loved was Ben Foster, just because that's a tough role he pulled off. And you know, when he first came in, you're always going like, oh, this one's going to action, this one's that way. And he just brought such a depth to it. So much so we kind of, and he was such a big star, we were like, will he come back? And it turned out he wanted to come back, but we were like, oh, he'll never come back. So we weren't calling each other, and finally brought him back for the current started episode. He's just such a sweet guy, and he's such a big supporter of the show. But all our guest stars were fun. I mean, Joel Hodgson, come on. So funny. I mean, I just kind of gave him some of those lines, and he goes off, he's doing these dances, and it's just great. So it was a fun set. We always try to run a fun set, because a lot of people like to have a tense set for comedy, and I can't work in a tense set. So I do.
Well, I just want to thank you all for giving us the best bionic woman I think I
Most buff.
Hi, I just want to say welcome to San Diego, and happy birthday, John. I know it was your birthday a couple days ago.
19.
I have a question for everyone. I know everyone is branching off into their different projects. I know John's having a new show on ABC, and I was wondering, what all of you are up to. Steve, if you're still writing, and anything on your projects are.
I opened a porn production company.
I'm starring in Martin's films.
Come on, show it.
Yeah, Steve,
Yeah, I'm going to be lighting the films.
what are you guys up to? What's going on?
I like to sleep in. Semi-agoraphobic, so you don't see me around too much.
Natasha, Natasha has a whole new business going.
I'm poor. I sometimes act if people let me sometimes, and then I kind of manage and do band stuff.
Come on, she's like an music management, which is, I think, kind of cool.
Yeah.
She needs a PR person, though.
And I'm trying to start a record label, but I have to have money first. Yay! That wasn't me trying to hey, you guys, I need money. That wasn't like an investment.
The buckets are by the door.
Before I answer, I just want to try something really cool with this reverb. Today, I feel like the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I just recently did a short film that's going to Sundance, so I'm gonna see where that goes.
What's it called?
It's called Frenching, as in French kissing. In fact,
John?
That show that you mentioned, unfortunately, it didn't get picked up. I've never heard of a show not going, and I did a movie called Waiting, which will be out in like a year. So, aside from that, excellent.
And I have a movie coming out October 8th. Please go see it or you'll never let me make another one.
it's a fantastic film. I Am David.
It's I Am David. It's quite different than Freaks and Geeks, I'll tell you that. It's a post-World War II. It's an upbeat, uplifting film. So, October 8th. Sorry for the shameless, awful plug. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Eric Jonas. She pretty much took my question I was going to ask you, so I'm kind of stuck. But I just want to say that how it's absolutely amazing when I saw that show back in '99 that you guys resemble so many characters I know in my school at Blvd over in Childress, and that's why I love the show so much. And actually, can anybody relate to that? The question that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm kind of shy, so
that's fine.
But now I know you guys what you guys played, but I don't remember what's your name is Tasha.
You'll know it. That was Cindy Sanders. She just looks so incredibly different.
Yeah, her hair is.
I know. Thanks, man.
Hey, I'm from Grosse Pointe.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Rich kid. No. That's Grosse Pointe Woods.
Yeah, that's right. When can we see, with all the success of the DVD, I have a two-part question. With all the success of the DVD and the fan following, the website and whatnot still running, what are the odds of Freaks and Geeks film?
Is there such odds as 0 to 0?
It's sort of right around there. Here's the thing. I've yet to see a reunion film that was not the worst thing in the world.
What about Brady Bunch?
Oh yeah, well that's true. The first Brady Bunch. The TV movie.
The Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
So I've always said if either Judd or I come up with like a brilliant idea, then it may happen. But I'm so afraid of tainting what we have. But you never know.
And the cast,
I don't think you can afford me.
Would you guys do it?
Yeah.
Like this?
Go get Harry Osborne, James Franco.
You have to come back at the same age, that's all we have.
Cass, what are some of your fondest memories that you brought back from the show?
If any.
Yeah.
You guys are the cast.
For the cast.
Your fond memory, come on.
There was this time a bird crapped right on John's face. It was really funny.
Any other fond memories?
I'm gonna have to think, so.
Take your time, man. Take your time.
In all seriousness, whenever we were around the cafeteria table doing any scenes like that, between takes, the three of us would just goof off to no end. That was a lot of fun.
They're very close and very funny. Yes.
Yeah, I was very amused on the DVD set that you say that James Franco would hit people a lot in the takes. So I just had a couple questions about that. One was there was a deleted scene on Beers and Beers where he slaps John, and I'm wondering if you knew that was coming. And the second part is in Spider-Man 2, he slaps Tobey Maguire twice in a row. I have this theory that the second one, Tobey doesn't know was coming. So can you back me up on that?
There's a warrant out for his arrest.
He's a very violent actor. But, I didn't have a problem with him slapping him. James Franco.
Actually, when we in Discos and Dragons, there was a whole subplot where where Daniel hated being an AV and he was like being mean. And there was, tell the stories.
Well, basically, I guess we weren't up to par that day to Franco's standards. And so, I guess to rile us up, he decided to ad-lib one scene where he turns just before he exits the room and says, "You guys are just a bunch of bad actors," and then slammed the door so hard he broke the set. But that's how he gets you.
Exactly.
You were drawn in at that point.
You weren't, no, and frankly, that's the other cool thing is everybody had a different style of acting on the show, and so James was definitely like, he's in the moment, so when he shows, he's fantastic on the screen, so I do not fault the man. Yes, you?
Hi, I'll try to make it quick. First, I want to say, Sam, I loved you in Club Dread.
Oh, thank you very much.
Also, given the success of the Tech War comic books, have you guys ever considered doing a comic book?
Well, brought that. I think it would be kind of cool, actually.
Or action figures?
Someone did action figures. If you've ever seen on the web, there's
He's in the
no action figures. Peter, yeah. But I've been that stuff up. He made a whole series of action figures, and they're hilarious. There's an Alex action figure even from the band, bass player.
One more thing. Where are the freaks?
We're open now.
No, where are the freaks at today?
Or the free, they're off smoking pot somewhere. Exactly. Yes.
For the actors first, what direction would you have liked to see your character go and develop and do?
Stud.
You got to extend it a long way, and then Paul, finish up with where you were taking it.
I mean, that's the fun thing about working on the show. I did not know what direction they were gonna. I mean, they were talking about having me leave the geeks for a while and then trying out, sports or something.
Well, we just wanted, how like year to year, you would have a friend and then the next year he wouldn't be your friend anymore. We wanted to play with sort of that, how that happens where suddenly John moved away from the group and I wanted to put Neil in swing choir. Come on, how funny is that? And I knew I wanted Kim Kelly to be pregnant too. Because there was always every high school had a pregnant girl. And so I thought it'd be kind of an interesting thing to do. And any of that?
I don't think I really had time to think about the future.
Yeah, there wasn't much of a future.
We kind of do. The writing was on the wall, so we were just crawling to the finish. Thanks.
At the end of the episode Choking and Token, where you guys dress up to go to a sci-fi convention, now that you're actually at a sci-fi convention, I'm wondering if it's kind of surreal to see real people dressed as Luke and Yoda running around. I guess to make an actual point, what was your inspiration for roles and scenes like that?
Well, I tend to dress up as Yoda in the comfort of my home, so.
I wore that green paint. The green paint, by the way, was not hypoallergenic, and I had hives all over my face. It was disgusting.
The lawsuit is still pending.
Yeah, I gotta share that.
Have you guys been to Comic-Con before? I come every year, so this is, to me, is the greatest thrill to be up on one of these panels, because otherwise in the back, I'm like, hey, pretty super cool. So you guys rock. I may just say that the Comic-Con people are the coolest people in the world. Everybody who comes out to these things, you guys so rock. Screw everybody else. This is what we care about. So, keep it up. Especially like the Kill Bill guys. Those are the coolest costumes. I think we have time for probably two more, so I'm gonna. I'll go to you, Ray.
Okay. How did you get Lindsay to laugh so hard?
Linda was a good laugher. She always laughed. The thing is, John was right. Working with Flaherty is the funniest thing. I would just crack behind the camera. He's so funny. Just everything he would do.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the outtake reels on the DVD, you can see like where we're coming from. He just.
Joe's a guy who kind of in life always just kind of remembers his lines. So he's always got that thing where I'm just trying to. So the good great thing about Flaherty, one more story is Joe Flaherty. Like people who have characters you love, and you go, hey, would you do this? I'm like, I gotta get out of here, kid. You say any character from SCTV, just say the name, and he'll do it. It's amazing. So if you ever run into Flaherty, he's the king. And I'm afraid this is our last question. We'll do.
I know that the 80s is somewhat autobiographical touch, but I was wondering if there was some reason why, if it was also integral that took place in that time as opposed to now?
Yeah, the biggest reason was I just didn't want to, and Judd was also this way, we didn't want to deal with cell phones, the internet, all that stuff, because it's sort of, you know, as cool as all that stuff is, it sort of has brought on an age of less communication, less face-to-face communication. And so I just like the idea of, you know, it's the time when we were actually forced to, other than telephone, to kind of talk to people and confront people. Also, as odd as it sounds, we wanted it to be pre-AIDS, so that the fear of sex and the fear of dating was purely about being afraid of dating and sex, and not about, you know, other things that could come from it. So, and it was nice to make, we really want to make it kind of timeless, because when you do something modern and suddenly here's the network like, hey, here's this hot new band, and you know, hey, the kids are wearing this now. And there's something, when you do something back then, you have a set palette of references, music, clothes, and you go for it, and you can't, you know, you don't have to deal with all that other stuff. So that was the motivation. And last question.
I like the writing, I like the acting. I graduated in '83, so the time period touches me too. My 11-year-old son here also loved the show. I'm trying to figure out why there isn't more TV like that touches generations, you know, and yet is really popular.
Well, you know what's interesting, because I just went through this on the movie I made, which I consider kind of a movie for everyone. And there's nothing Hollywood hates more than saying, who's it for? It's for everyone, because they don't know how to niche market it. You know, it's all about advertisers. You go like, we get kids from 15 to 18, so you can sell tennis shoes, and we get people from, and it really does come down to a business thing. I'm not saying that like, oh, those bastards. It's just, unfortunately, it is the nature of the business. And so when you give somebody something, it's for the whole family. They literally, their heads explode. They don't know what to do with it. So it's sad. But here's the only speech I will make is what you guys have to do. So many times what we do is kind of write nasty letters about we don't like this, we don't like that. But the best thing you can do, and I know you guys do it, but you have to encourage other people to do it. You see something you like, write encouraging letters to the people that are making it, to the studios that are making it, to the money people, and say, this is the kind of stuff we want. Please keep making it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because nobody can argue with thank yous, but they can always toss a thank you letter in the garbage can. So if you love it, let them know. We're signing autographs wherever they're signing the autographs. Please come by. There are a few handkerchiefs for President sticks buttons on the t-shirt.
I'm glad I took a trip.
You hold it and film while I take pictures. That'll be better. Right now this thing doesn't work. So do I. So hold it down, and if it doesn't go right away.
Do I lose the camera then?
I'm so hungry.
Probably didn't have a chance to give you your money.
Really?
I don't really hate Jordan. He's really slow.
Yeah,
He's not really good at stepping it up, and he also so late.
That's why.
Let's go along again.
That's why I don't win.
I tried. Yeah, I got
I don't want to go. I had.
What was it? I could have taken the picture for you. Can I stop videoing or am I still videoing?
Yeah, I guess we can call it.